You're listening to Around Comics.
And welcome back to Around Comics, episode 393. This is Trade Talks. I'm Brian Salazar. With me is Christopher Niesman and Tom Caters. Tom, I don't want to talk about it, Caters.
I don't want to talk about it.
I just want to hear.
I have topics. I just
not gonna go there.
Not gonna go
Chris, I want to wade into the controversy. Niesman and Tom, I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it. Already heard enough about it. Don't need it.
What's going on, gentlemen?
We of course were talking about the controversy on Tom's Trade Talk pick. It's been tore the internet in half.
Yeah.
A French comic about old men. Yeah.
How dare you pick one of them Frenchy comics?
One of those French comics.
I need some light on me.
A European comic.
I feel like I'm in a interrogation.
You look like you're in a cave.
I am. I'm in my
That
cave.
does not help the whole interrogation look.
Yeah.
I'm sweating it out under the lights.
Really? Tell us what you thought about the book. Before we jump in here, Tom, you can get in on the ACTV stuff. I literally don't think that we have done an episode of ACTV since you said you were going to.
Oh my God!
Your fault.
Yeah, we skipped a week and we did K Billy Super Sounds last week. It was I would be very interested to know what you thought about our show on Natural Born Killers, which is a bananas movie.
How long was it?
About an hour.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we kept it tight and right. But yeah, I got to talk about Natural Born Killers last week, and decided that we're just going to do a little nugget-sized episode for 4 rooms before we do some Dusk Till Dawn, which I'm excited about.
There you go.
Damn, everybody be cool. You be cool.
Yeah, but we'll be back with some ACTV this week. But anyway, we have Sal, hit us with the stinger.
Oh, all right. Here we go.
It's my favorite.
This is our Trade Talk.
There it is. This is our Trade Talk.
There you go.
What is our Trade Talk?
The Old Geezers.
The Old
Volume
Geezers.
1. Old Geezers.
They were
written,
old.
but that's not just describing us. It's describing this book.
There was some definitely similarities between the Old Geezers and us, I think, to some degree. There's 3 of them.
The forgetting of names.
Yeah.
Often
Can't remember shit.
Can't remember anything.
64. How can I remember that?
Still angry. Still have a lot of anger considering
A lot of baggage. Yeah.
A lot of
baggage. Yeah.
They may have had more interesting lives than us, though. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. They wouldn't have wasted their time on that shit.
We'll get into one of them. It was a surprisingly interesting life. The pool scene just cracked my shit up.
Oh yeah, with I don't know. I can't remember any of their names because they're all Frenchies. But
Perot
was
Perot's the radical one.
Yeah. What's the
terrorist?
little short kind of?
Oh, I wrote these all down, so I remember them. It is Emile.
Emile.
Yeah.
Emile.
Fucking all tatted up.
Yeah. Samoan style.
Yeah. Samoan rugby, the only white Samoan rugby player in history. I love that. Yeah. So Tom, this was your pick. Why don't you kick it off and tell us what it was, who did it, and kind of why you picked this one.
Is Wilfred Lupano was the writer and the artist, and this is going to be a real challenge for a podcast that can barely pronounce names in English or remember them. So
I've got my butcher's knife out for this one because they're all going down.
Paul Caouette would be my guess. Yeah, would be my guess at it, and it's a French comic. It's so it ain't American superheroes. The reason I picked it is because I randomly read it. I got it from the library, on Hoopla, and it was my week to pick. And I was like, let's do this book because I liked it. I'd never heard anything about it other than like I saw it on the old Hoopla app from my library. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I like European comics sometimes. I'll give this one a read. And I enjoyed it. And first of all, the art is gorgeous in it, just like a really beautiful looking story. But aside just from the art, I think it's it's got sort of all the things that you kind of would like about a slice of life story, especially if you're going to do a slice of life from somebody that's lived a long life, which is sort of the approach to the book, right? It follows sort of three friends in France. They're elderly. They're the old geezers, right? And it's sort of like
they're almost some octogenarian. What, they're 77-ish years old.
Yeah, and sort of following, like, they've led very interesting lives. One of them has been like a political radical his whole life, and one of them is, Emil, the one we were talking about, who's got all tatted up, is sort of like he's also led an interesting life, but perhaps not as upfront about it. And you sort of find out about it in more interesting ways that he's sort of done things. And then there's Antoine, who's sort of like friends with both of them. He's sort of into the politics thing that Perot's into, but not as heavy. And he had a family, and he had, he's sort of like moved on with his life in a way, and sort of had what you would consider like sort of he got a job, and he had a wife, and he had kids, and like, the first story is really about his wife passing away and sort of this discovery of like secrets that she had that he didn't realize, and like sort of bringing these friends together to sort of experience that. And then within this first story, there's really two stories. And the second story is sort of about finding out about sort of like this radical lifestyle that Perot lives, which is pretty satirical and funny and sort of poignant. And like one of the things I really do like about the book is that at times it's really funny, and at times it's sad and sort of poignant, and like it doesn't take any of the characters too seriously, but like it's still a story about like these people being friends, and sort of like how they've navigated their lives, and how like how they fit into the modern world from the world that they came from, right? Where, like they exist in a very different place in the 1950s than we exist in the 2010s, and sort of like that difference that lies in there, and what's similar and what's different. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a really cool book.
Yeah. The entire time I was reading, I was just like, I really want to see like the Amazon Prime original TV series.
They made a movie out of it.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. It's a French movie. So,
okay.
It's a French
movie. So
it's a French movie.
Nobody's seen it.
Nobody's seen it. And they're making a sequel to it, I guess. At least that's what I've read online.
I enjoyed it as well. I was a little worried initially that it was going to be sort of like an anti-boomer book.
Yeah.
Like it seems like that was my fear, at least going into it. I just thought, oh geez, here this is just
you get one good page of that. You
do, and you get an exploration of it, and you get a response to it to a certain degree of like, listen, we're not all the same people. Like you can't just like lump everyone that's in there, everyone that was a baby boomer into together. You ruin the planet. It's a little insane to kind of do that, but it wasn't that really at all. Like you said, it was a story of these three friends and their different lives. And as you were explaining it, it sort of hit me as like, you kind of had these three different guys that had different paths, and if you wanted to sort of boil it down, as like one was very radical, politically radical life, and he didn't have much outside of that. Like he didn't have a family, like his entire life was sort of consumed by that. And then the other was sort of on the other end of the spectrum, where his life was kind of an adventure, and he did a lot of more, just sort of things that he enjoyed doing, and yet he didn't really have what you would consider a normal life either. He didn't have any family, and then their third friend was sort of in the middle. He had much more of a mundane, sort of regular life of children and that kind of thing. Although, he
It was a union organizer.
a union organizer, that kind of thing, but
Mhm.
worked for a corporation and had kids or a kid and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was an interesting book. It's a different type of thing where the story, you can kind of see where they're going with it at times, but it's not a typical sort of story. Being French or being
Mhm.
European, it's more about just sort of like the adventure of it as opposed to any great goal or destination,
Mhm.
which I thought was interesting, and it was just pleasant to read that and just sort of kind of go with these guys and see what they're doing. And there were really funny moments in it. There were really kind of silly things. I love the idea of like the blind activists or the
Yeah.
sight
Yeah.
and how they're still just like using whatever they have to try and infiltrate and
Yeah.
tear down the system, take it to the man, still kind of things. And the first story was sad in a lot of ways. And then you get to meet his daughter and that whole story about her and
Granddaughter.
I'm sorry, yeah, granddaughter. um yeah, it was a very entertaining, like enjoyable read about these three kind of kooky characters. You can easily see, a movie made out of this with some older actors and
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was a fun read for sure.
I like how they set up questions and didn't answer them. I mean, there's two kind of they made a point of like two questions that were we never find out who the father of Sophie's baby is.
No,
Mm.
they don't ever. Well, it's not over. I mean, there's
No,
I
no,
think
it's
yeah.
exactly. So, I like that they leave some of those things to be explored later and kind of set that up. And I can't wait to find out what it's is it Perot what he did to piss off Wachette. Because he basically wasn't able to she like dropped him completely out of their lives for 40 years or something.
Mm. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
the thing I liked about it too is like it is like sort of a story that kind of like the beats of it sort of move at like how life works.
Mhm.
It's like this person's spouse passed away, and that's a reason for these characters to get together. And like you said, Sal, it's not like there's some like here's what the end is when we solve this,
Right,
and
right.
like this will be the climax of the story. And like it just kind of rolls along on its own like momentum,
Yeah.
like of like, okay, so this happened, and then all of a sudden, Sophie has a bunch of money. So what does that have? And like she accidentally put something else into motion that she didn't intend to
Right.
that she didn't intend to happen. And like it kind of just like moves at like a really nice pace of like it never you would think like, oh, there's going to be some really slow, like boring parts to like this type of book. And it's like, well, no, they're always moving it ahead, or like the art is doing something interesting, or like it's
Mhm.
just really constantly sort of like propelling forward into like what the next thing is.
And even when they did like flashbacks, they would flash back to the 60s, or they'd
Mm-hmm.
flash back to their
Mhm.
childhoods at
Mm-hmm.
times, that kind of thing. And um, it was never like there wasn't any sort of deliberate necessarily message or
Mm-hmm.
answer or anything in it. It was just sort of another moment,
Mhm.
a little bit of information you would get about them. You'd learn a little bit more about them as you went along, but it wasn't, so many stories, mainstream comics, and if you look at, TV and movies and most medium now, it's like you kind of know the setup. Like that's the goal. Like, oh, we're going to give you this setup, and the rest of the story is trying to figure out that problem that we create in the beginning. And it works. I mean, it gets
Mhm.
gets you hooked and interested in it. And this really didn't have that necessarily. It had a problem that you learn about as the book goes on, but then the problems change, and like you said, it sort of evolves and moves around, and it was never a matter of like we're gonna solve this thing. And at the end of the day, it's like these guys are in their 70s. the
Yeah.
story kind of ends like inevitably they're all going to die. You know what I mean? Like it's not like these guys are going to be around for 70. I mean, I guess they could be, but it didn't. It just didn't feel that way. It felt. It really, and I think the art had a big part of this for me. It felt a lot like a Bloom County comic strip, but you know what I mean? Like it just they were very much these interesting characters that just sort of what was their day like and where did they go and they were where were they kind of going or what were they doing and you were following along.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of, like you said, there's lots of really great comedic parts to it. Like the using that one dude who to shit his pants as a form of protest, or like the whole thing about the bread company coming out with like the 8 different types of baguettes.
Yeah,
and like
I just want bread. I just want a baguette. I just want a baguette. Yeah, it's very much the like going to a Starbucks. It's it's like I just want a cup of coffee.
And also, like in the second story when they sort of go to see like how all these radical old people are living, I found that really interesting because like you said, like the whole thing with it's gonna be anti-baby boomer, or it's gonna be like it kind of pokes fun at it, but also is kind of like an admiration for the characters of like
what they were still able to accomplish, what they were still
they're still
to do. And,
like they still have like their heart in it and they believe what they're doing, and like in a way like it's okay to it's like you're kind of laughing with them because it's obviously sort of like this ludicrous situation, right, where it's like they have their map of all their independent islands in France, which is just everyone's apartment that is privately seceded from France, and now they're all their own independent. It's like
I don't live by your rules,
to me,
man.
It felt like a senior citizen fight club, like when Tyler Durden was sort of had his little house full of all of his little soldiers. That's what it felt like, these little radical, old people fighting the system and trying to figure out ways to help the younger generation do that too and build this little army.
With their raised bed gardens on the roof and
bees. It was just really good. It was just really well balanced in that sense of like, I felt like I said, like it was never laughing at anybody as much as it was sort of like, laughing with them, or like, like it was always, when characters get mad, or when like even when sort of very sad things happen, it's sort of like it's not heavy, a book like that where it's sort of like the weight of that stuff can kind of like pull you down, right, where it's like there's a poignancy to that, but also like the idea of these 3 friends being together and still being friends after decades and decades is sort of like the heart of it too, right, of like all the things that these people have gone through, right, and like the very different experiences they've had and sort of like the disappointments that they've all experienced and sort of like the regrets, right, because that's a big part of it too, is like Emil went out and had adventures, but then in the second book you kind of see that he maybe doesn't feel as happy about some of those adventures as in hindsight, realizing like, oh, that was a mistake, that story of the island, which is real, of Nuara, of like, a big part of that is him sort of coming to terms with like, he's like kind of the least articulate of the 3 friends, right? Like he's the one who seems like maybe he doesn't think that much about like his own life the way that
he does. But he does. He just has trouble articulating.
Whereas the other 2, where Antoine and Poirot, seem like they're much more like in tune with thinking about what their life has meant and whether that's successful or a failure, like what those things mean. And there's such an interesting moment to see like that character Emil sort of like in his own way sort of express his own self-reflection of what his life meant, like something that he did that he, in hindsight, wasn't such a great adventure, and like he kind of realizes that now.
Yeah. One of the things I respect about the book is that it didn't lean on the easy crutch of them recalling the glory days, right? And it didn't, I mean, yeah, it's the old geezers, and that's obviously them being old is a focus of the book, but they're just living their lives. This is just stories that take place in their late 70s, but it doesn't completely lean on that, right?
Yeah, and it is true, right? It's always like people lead these people, who are lucky enough to lead these long lives. There's all these surprising turns within their life that you don't know about, and someday you find out that this guy who's 77 robbed a post office once, but like it's just like a thing that happened, right? And like,
everybody was young at one time, and you forget that. Like you meet someone who's old, and it's like impossible. Someone in their 70s or 80s, it's almost impossible to think about them as being young and wild and doing something crazy, and that sort of thing. And yeah, it kind of shows that and gives you that idea about these guys, is that they had all these things in their lives, they had all these experiences, but it was interesting, like sort of at the end of it or near the end of their lives, the things that kind of concern them, or the regrets, or the things they wish they had changed, had very little to do with a lot of the big choices or a lot of the time they spent doing things. You know what I mean? Like it didn't end up being about the things that they spent so much time consumed with, which I thought was sort of interesting and telling. But it was also funny. Like, one point in the book, I was like, oh, they're three hippies. Like these are three old hippies. You know what I mean? That are still trying to live that life, but which is an interesting thing for me, looking back on my own life. Like I won't get into the story of it long, but at one point in my life, I was my best friend lived in a commune. His family was part of a commune, so I grew up around these people that were very much trying to change things, and they were, they would be this age now, maybe a bit older than the geezers, but they were, this was the late 70s, maybe early 80s. And yeah, for about 3 years, my best friend lived in this commune, and I would spend a lot of time there with them, and it was an interesting experience. I didn't think about it really at the time. It was just like a bunch of people living in a house, and they grew their own food, and they all ate together, and they weren't, it was weird to me because they weren't related, they weren't family, and they didn't, like, some of them didn't even know each other before this sort of thing, this experiment that they were trying to do. But looking back on it, it was like, oh, this is it was a really, from my perspective, sort of wholesome thing that they were attempting to do. And trying to make the world a better place in their own way, like with whatever power they had. That's all they could do. They couldn't necessarily affect change worldwide, but with what power they had. And that's kind of how I look at these guys, is like they're still, it's in their 70s, trying to affect change with whatever power they have, however small or large that is. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it doesn't mean a whole lot, but I don't know. It was an interesting read for sure. Did you guys have you guys watched Only Murders in the Building?
I'm about halfway through. About halfway through.
When I started watching that show, I didn't love it initially, but as I watched it more and more, and I really started to fall in love with it. And I think a big part of why was just the fact that you have two comedic actors in that show that are both in their 70s.
Yeah.
And the fact that at this point in their career, there's an opportunity and there's a place still for those two guys to make people laugh and do some good work and make an entertaining television show. It's just kind of cool. Like, just just the idea that Steve Martin and Martin Short,
Martin
right,
Short.
are able to have this pretty popular show that kind of taps into something very popular in this day and age, true crime podcasts,
Mhm.
and kind of laugh at it and laugh at themselves and make fun of it. And in the same way, it's like they're not really laughing at anyone. They're not making fun of old people necessarily, but they're laughing at their own reality of it, the own reality of getting old. And that's, there are ridiculous funny things about getting old if you're, sort of able to look at it in the right perspective. But that's what I felt about this too. It's like, it's interesting to see, stories about people that aren't gorgeous and in their 20s and perfect, and you know what I mean, or whatever.
Well, two-thirds of them anyway.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent on that, but yeah, it's I want to definitely read the second volume because there's another volume of this out, I think, on Hoopla, so I'm definitely gonna read it. But yeah, it was a cool book. It was cool to just the whole sort of process of it, of just like going into it, sort of going, shit, this is gonna piss me off. This book is gonna probably piss me off.
and then be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and then be really
enjoy
surprised
it.
by
Yeah. It's and I mean, we've talked, the story, characters, all of that. Man, what a beautiful book to look at.
Yeah.
It just that
absolutely.
And I mean, it could have been a really shitty story. I still would have enjoyed looking at the book, but it was an entertaining story, and the characters were entertaining, but it could have survived just on the art.
And there's complete pages in the book. I mean, multiple times there's pages where there's no words.
Yep.
There's just the storytelling, and a lot of times it was flashbacks or that kind of thing, and they were beautiful and they're gorgeous, and the art just made you spend time looking at these pages, even though there's no words on them whatsoever.
That flashback page of the three of them whenever they were kids.
Oh, beautiful! That sequence, that whole
what
sequence,
a great page.
Fishing and being pirates in the tree house, and
yeah,
gorgeous stuff. And then there's another one later on where, it's not Emile, the Union guy,
Antoine
and his wife when they're young. And the whole red bus thing, and it's just sort of like a dream. It's him dreaming, and it's just it's just gorgeous. It's like a whole life.
That's a beautiful page. Page.
Yeah. There's some just gorgeous art throughout the whole thing, and great characters. Like, it's cartoony. The characters are exaggerated, cartoonish. So
there's a little Raphael Albuquerque in there, and some of it, just the pointy noses, which I kept kind of, it's like, oh, what artist does this remind me of?
I was so much Bloom. Like I said, I loved Bloom County when I was a kid, reading that comic strip. I had the books, and I don't know why. I kept flashing back to especially Perot. Like he just reminded me so much of a Bloom County character, like just the way he would walk, stomp into a scene and sort of like bitch about something and stomp back out. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like a Gary Trudeau kind of a character.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So we liked it. Good job, Tom.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah. Random pick. Worked out good. Sometimes just pick something and read it. And you're like, oh, this is great.
Before we announce our next trade talks, do we have anything from any listeners or anything on this, Sal?
Not on this book. Well, I mean, we got some comments here in the comments page. Let's see. Greg Porter said, I'm only mid-50s, but I know a younger me kind of maybe thought people my age now didn't really have fun much anymore. And I think that certainly is a thing. Like, I think people get miserable as they get older, a lot of times. But I don't think anybody. It has to be that way. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what the secret is. I want to know the secret because I'm rapidly getting old, and it's sort of like, how do I? Well, first, how do I make it to my 70s or 80s? But if I'm there, how am I not just like a miserable, prick? more than I already am.
Yeah.
I started that in my 30s, so being a miserable prick. All right. Well, let me see. I'll go ahead and let you know what I picked out, and I had to kind of scramble. So this is something I have not read. I saw it around some comic stands here in the last year or so. But picking Ice Cream Man, Volume 1. Rainbow
interesting.
Sprinkles by W. Maxwell Prince and Martin Morazzo and Chris O'Halloran. So it's just 4 issues, the first volume. So it's available on Hoopla and Amazon and probably your local LCS. So Ice Cream Man, Volume 1.
Ice Cream. That's a horror book.
Yes. I love the little intro blurbs, chocolate vanilla existential horror.
There we go. That should be interesting. I think I read the first issue or 2 of it, and then I didn't go back. So I'm actually, it's one of those books that I've been meaning to go back to.
Well, there you
and
go.
Read. There's quite a few volumes of it at this point, but
I will. It's is it a horror anthology? Is that kind of what I'm seeing?
Yeah, it seems like something like Trilogy of Terror, or Creep Show, where it's like stories that it's sort of linked. I think the Ice Cream Man is sort of like the Crypt Keeper.
He's the Crypt Keeper
kind of guy.
That makes sense.
Although he may be more involved than maybe the Crypt Keeper was. You know what I mean? So he might actually be involved in the stories to some degree. But yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
cool.
there you go.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yay. Yeah. Sal, you said we did have an email though, right? A listener email?
Yeah. We do have an email. Someone wrote in. Let's see here. This is from Ed. Ed said, I read a whole whack of Eternals comics via Marvel Unlimited earlier this year, and none of it, outside of the Gaiman miniseries, which I used to own, got me hyped for the movie. When it comes to the original Kirby run, I agree with Tom on everything he said. However, I really dug Cersei, who was first introduced in about issue number 4, I think. I felt that her character introduction, which takes up most of the issue, was a highlight of the original run. I get the feeling that Kirby tapped into his romance comics writing drawing chops for that issue. Also, I wonder to what degree her character is influenced by Cher. Maybe it's the 1976 Fastinisha wardrobe that she wears. Of course, I remember...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, didn't Cersei end up being an Avenger for a while?
Well, he says, of course, I remember Cersei best as an Avenger, especially during the Galactic Storm era, where it seemed that she was both overpowered but also used as a deus ex machina whenever it seemed like the Avengers were all going to die. She'd just readjust everyone at a molecular level to survive a nuclear blast or the vacuum of space, and the only other thing she'd do is occasionally flirt with Captain America and make snarky remarks about everyone, friend or foe. Anyways, gents, thanks for all the entertainment. I'm glad you're all back and doing the show. So there we go. Little reply. Thank you, Ed, for listening and for sending an email.
Yeah. Info at aroundcomics.com.
That's right. Yeah. We also got a new patron this last week, Mr. Michael. I'm just going to say Michael H. Thank you very much for becoming a patron of Around Comics. We hope you. And I haven't been able to put out any Big Geek Show episodes because my recorder is broken. And I have to try and figure out. I went to go record. I think it was last Thursday. I recorded an entire episode before I realized that my recorder was not working.
It was gold, and you'll never get it back.
It just
belongs to the ether now. Belongs to the ether.
Completely gone. So hopefully
we'll take some of that fat Patreon money and go buy you a new recorder.
Buy a new recorder? Yeah, maybe. It just shuts off. I hit the record button and it just turns off. So
It's
I
like,
don't know.
no, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I got
Not
tired of me.
interested. It's like, oh God, again.
This guy.
Another one of these?
Can you
Jesus
do something else, buddy?
Christ. I'm recording a Tom versus Ghosts, the DC horror comic. I have a couple issues of Ghosts.
Just
And,
ghosts.
Ghosts. And
Nice.
I found a good one that's got some nice it's got some good stories in it. It's got some early 80s Bob Kanigher
Ghost
and,
stories.
some Keith
Nice.
Giffen too in there. So there's some good things.
Speaking
Are
of
you-
ghosts, have you watched that show on CBS?
No.
Ghost?
I have not.
Surprisingly funny
No.
and good. Remake of a British TV show. So
Of course.
of
Dune
course it
passed
is.
Dune passed the Cater's test. I did not fall asleep
Hey,
watching Dune. There you go.
Nice.
I liked.
Awesome.
I enjoyed Dune very much. I was
Well-
very happy watching that.
Well, Tom, join us this Sunday for ACTV, and we can get your
Dude,
thoughts
it's
on Dune.
Dude, it's Halloween, man. I'm gonna be out trick or treating with my little kids.
I understand.
It's gonna be a
You
rough
guys,
day.
you dressing up? Are you dressing up for Halloween, Tom?
I'm a king. Yes, my daughter is going as a princess, so I'm dressed as a king.
Oh,
So I have like a cloak and a crown and a scepter.
very nice.
I'm an
You gonna-
accessory to her costume.
Mhm.
Are you going in lieu of candy? Will you be knighting children as they come to the door? You just-
Giving them full candy bars.
oh,
Not
nice.
in my does be too many. Maybe if we had less kids. I got 4 giant bags from Costco. Because that's how many we get so many kids
Yeah,
in our neighborhood. We'll go through all of them. I'll give away all the candy.
One year I gave away candy, candy bars and liquor. I was giving liquor to the adults.
Nice.
Yeah,
You're making. They're walking away. Kids, you never do anything to that house ever, ever. They're off the map for you.
Was it like a squirt gun that you just spray? Like,
yeah, just fire. Open up.
open up, here you go.
Your
Come back out, there you go.
tequila shooters.
Yeah. Get back in there, guys.
Do you guys want to see? So I have a Halloween party I'm going to Saturday, so I'm dressing up.
Uh-oh.
My kids are too old at this point. I mean, they still
Yeah.
will probably dress
Yeah.
up, but I'm not trick or treating with them. But I am going. You want to see part of my costume? I can show you part of it. Hold on. I'll
Okay.
reach back. Talks amongst yourselves.
He's going as one of the Eternals.
He always takes this very seriously. This is his favorite holiday.
I was about to make up a name of an Eternal, because I can't remember any of their names anyway, besides like Icarus and Cersei. And I think there's one named Kingo.
Okay,
I
it's
think. I can't remember.
Oh, nice.
Yeah!
Nice.
Wow!
nice.
I like it.
Is this Leonard Skinner thing going on?
Something like that. I don't know. Yeah, we're doing. My wife and I decided on going on as hippies. We're just gonna be dirty. And originally, she
You're gonna
wanted to
be
be a
dirty
hippie,
hippies.
and I was gonna be Charles Manson.
Mm.
I didn't. I thought nobody was really gonna get it, and
I would
not
get
quite-
it. All you got to
I'm-
do
I'm
is
not-
draw the X on your face.
Yeah, I could just do the.
Yeah, just do a quick X.
So I'm just gonna
Are
be
you-
a hippie. I got some long hair, and I got a big cheesy mustache.
Nice.
Yeah, it should be fun. God, this thing is hot.
I
I
was
gotta take
yeah.
this thing off.
We'll see how long you wear that.
It's like Robert Plant hair.
Nice. Oh yeah,
Chris, what are you dressing as?
I'm dressing as a curler all Sunday.
There you go.
Curler.
Mm-hmm.
Boo, no fun.
What's
No
the
fun,
What's the
Chris.
candy situation at your houses? What do you give out? What's your
I'm
what do people look forward to?
Snickers.
Full-size
Cheese squares?
Snickers?
Did you get-
Not full size. We go with the
Fun size Snickers?
fun size Snickers. Yeah,
Okay.
fun size
Okay,
Snickers.
cool.
I used to do almond joy, and apparently my wife told me that was
I love almond
pretty
joys.
that was pretty lame. I was like, I love
I
almond joys.
like almond joys too. I think
It
those
is
are
hit or
always
miss
the
though, Because kids
Yeah.
are either gonna, like a lot of kids don't like
Yeah.
coconut, so
Yeah. Well, you do the mounds with the almond joys because sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't.
Here you go. Here's a Werther's. Here's some root beer barrels. And some,
don't break your teeth.
Yeah, here you go. Here's some old people candy.
Here's some.
Mm-hmm.
What were the like chalky discs? What were the?
Oh,
what were the-
Necco wafers.
Necco wafers. Here you go.
Yeah.
There's some Necco wafers.
Yeah.
I always thought the
Disgusting.
what were the like wax bottles with the like flavor with the color
Coca-Cola
with the colored sugar water in them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
basically.
I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
remember. Oh, you know what I watched this week? A Halloween movie. Well, I watched a couple of Halloween movies, but I watched Slumber Party Massacre,
Oh, God.
which I felt dirty. Why? It's like all these. It's like what? This is a bunch of like half naked high school
Yeah.
girls. Well, there's way too many half naked high school girls
Yeah.
in this movie for me to enjoy it anymore. But I watched the new Candyman, which was kind of interesting.
the Peel, the Jordan Peele.
Oh, I didn't even know if it was. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
it was good.
yeah.
It was interesting. It was well done. I
Nice
really liked
update.
a nice update, but it was essentially a sequel and done like very well in that sense.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. I was really surprised at how good it was.
Nice.
And it dealing with Cabrini Green once again, or the history of Cabrini Green and Chicago.
Yeah, 'cause it's not there anymore.
No, and it
Yeah.
talks about that, and it's interesting because it starts off with like this black friends that are I'm not sure which ones live in a high-rise condo on the land that Cabrini Green was at, and then they don't even know that they don't know the history, and then their friend basically tells them a ghost story,
The urban legend of Candyman.
But it was interesting. Yeah, it was really good. It was very well done. I thought it was entertaining, and the fact that it ended up being like a sequel essentially from the first movie, I thought it was really smart how they did it.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to double check. I'm pretty sure that's a Jordan Peele production.
That would make sense. That would,
Yeah.
That would definitely make
He's
sense.
I love that is probably for a whole generation is becoming known as a horror director now.
I mean, I still miss Key and
Peele.
but yeah,
Such a great
I
show.
love that show. But it's funny because I do remember, like, there are episodes in that show that would get dark at times. Like there would be horror elements in at the end of a sketch or something. Like it would turn really weird and dark. Not all the time, but every once in a while, something would go really dark.
What was the
And
Urkel sketch?
Oh, I don't even remember.
What was that? Was that Family Matters? Was that they did a look up the Key and Peele Family Matters?
I remember,
sketch.
but I can't remember it well.
It's like
enough to-
Urkel. It went like Twilight Zone, where Urkel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Yes.
good.
Like that.
So
I'm sure. Yeah. So you see, like his sort of horror.
It's there. It's there.
influence.
Yeah.
It's there
It's there.
early on, so it's
Mhm.
not surprising.
I'm gonna have to
But
watch.
yeah,
that
he is-
sketch.
I didn't care for his Twilight Zone remake, the TV show. It was kind
Yeah.
of boring. Wasn't great.
Yeah.
But
That's all right.
not everything's going to be a home run.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You miss sometimes. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Slumber Party Massacre, though.
I'll
I
probably
did-
watch either The Shining or a Halloween.
On Halloween.
Halloween Eve will probably be my spooky movie watching.
I've been trying to watch like something every week, a movie
Mhm.
or two. I've been going back and forth between like old stuff. Like I watched Prom Night, which I forgot the one. Here's the one benefit going back to old geezers. One benefit of getting old is I forgot who the killer was of Prom Night. So it's like, oh,
You're like, oh,
I get to watch this whole movie again.
okay, yeah.
And I forgot that there was so much disco dancing in prom night.
a lot.
Did not realize
A very intense amount of disco dancing.
Yeah.
Jamie
I
Lee
love
Curtis.
going back and reading old comic books that I haven't read in a decade or more. It is absolutely like reading them for the first time.
Yeah, there is that one. That's the only benefit of getting older. Joe G wants to know if we talked about the end of Tom King's Strange Adventures yet. Did we talk about that?
No, let's save it for next week, though.
Yeah,
I have to read it still.
Yeah,
I was waiting for it to all come out.
I gotta think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta process it.
Gotta process everything, man. You know what I mean, dude? Can't rush into thoughts about anything.
You gotta put everything in your piles. All right. Well, are we wrapped up here for the week?
I guess it's kind of a short episode, but that's all right, right?
That's all right. Tom, nice pick, bud. I'm looking forward to reading volume 2 of that.
All right. Cool. I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah. So like I said, email the show, info@aroundcomics.com. Let us know what you thought about the old geezers, and check out Ice Cream Man Volume 1. That'll be our next trade talk. We'll talk about that sometime in November. Sal updates the Amazon book club, so you can check out that and all of our other picks from the beginning of our trade talks. Mention Patreon. You can help support the show by becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/aroundcomics. There you'll have access to all sorts of fun stuff like ACTV and Tom Versus and Big Geek Show when Sal gets his recorder fixed, and all sorts of other fun stuff. So if you are a patron, we really appreciate it. It does help us not have to worry about the finances of this here production. Yeah, that's what I got. You guys got anything else?
Nope.
All right.
For me.
Everyone have a safe, happy, healthy Halloween. Check those apples for razor blades, all that stuff.
That's never happened.
Yeah, don't get me started. The only proven cases of tampered candy were parents poisoning their own kids' candy.
Sick fucker.
Not strangers.
Not
their own children.
However.
Yeah, we can all understand that. So,
yeah, I'm not judging. I'm not judging.
Wow.
It's like when you see those stories about like this woman drove her minivan off a cliff with all their kids in it. And before I had kids, I used to be like, oh my God, why would you do that? And now that I have kids, I'm like,
okay,
I could see.
I look at cliffs differently.
I could see perhaps being driven to the mindset of driving a car off a cliff. I could see it. I'm not going to do it.
Listen, it's not that big of a stretch, is all you're saying.
Yeah,
it's not
I'm
like
just
you're
saying,
going to do it, but
I'm just like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. You guys try and stay off mountain roads now, just in case.
Yeah, I'm empathetic. I get it.
All right. Well, everyone, have an awesome Halloween. We will be back next Tuesday. Regular episode talking about all sorts of comic book goodness. In the meantime,
in between time,
we'll be everywhere in
and around comics.
Comics.